Abel, and became really a good friend of Abel after he was convicted, sentenced to 40 years prison instead of execution, and primarily avoiding execution because Donovan had the foresight to think that it might be possible in the future for we might want him to exchange for one of our people. And of course, that's the way it turned down. A year after the exchange, Donovan wrote about it in a book, Strangers on a Bridge. And this is basically what you see in the movie Bridge of Spies. Powers wanted to write a book. The agency said, no, we don't want you to write a book. He could have anyway, but he didn't want to go against what might be, was considered to be against the national interest. So he didn't, and he was prevented from writing a book for the next several years. Finally, in 1970, he wrote his story, Operation Overflight, and telling his story for the first time. He was thankful to be able to do. When he came home, as you remember, there was a real question about what he had done in prison and why hadn't he destroyed the photo equipment, and why he didn't use that needle, and why he stood up at his trial and said, I'm sorry. Bobby Kennedy thought he should be tried as a traitor. Many he was immediately, of course, debriefed in great detail by the CIA people. They issued a report concluding that the guy had comported himself well and done the best he could under the circumstances, having been totally unprepared for anything like this. The closest he got in the way of advice, in addition to here's a needle, kill yourself if you want to, he asked once, what happens, if I'm interrogated? Nobody was told. You might as well tell them everything, they'll get it out of you anyway. Well, he knew that was not what he wanted to do. He actually withheld a great deal of information. And saying he's sorry, which of course was what his defense attorney advised him to do to get a reasonable sentence, and 10 years was certainly a reasonable sentence. The day the CIA report was published, he appeared before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and was grilled at length about it. At the end of which he got a standing ovation from the senators who were him. I met the guy after the hearings. He was still a CIA employee, and I really didn't know what to do with him. I didn't want to send him back to fly more U-2 planes. So what they did was assign him to my office because following his shoot down, the agency people came to us realizing they made a terrible mistake giving this guy no preparation. so they asked us put together a program for the other pilots so they will be better prepared. We did that. I won't go into details about the program, except to say that we didn't torture anybody, and we don't think torture is a good thing or a useful thing. So they assigned our officer to help us with run that program, and that's when we got to know him very well. He was there for several weeks. We got to know him, and he got to know our secretary, got to know her very well, well enough so that when he divorced Barbara, 2 months later, he married our secretary and took her off. The only thing I have against Powers is that he took our good secretary off to California. If you, the questions, remained. Many people still wondered, did he really do what he should have done in prison? And I can tell you from my personal experience with the guy that he's as honest as the day is long. He is. Here's what Donovan wrote about him in the movie. That his only contact with Donovan was coming home in the airplane. Remember? How many people have seen the movie already? Okay, quite a few. And those of you who haven't seen it, I really urge you to see it. I'm showing it, as Bill said, at 1 o'clock here in this room. Here's what Donovan wrote. Powers was a special type, I thought. People at home have been critical of his performance when downed and later when tried in Moscow. Yet, in charity, suppose you wish to recruit an American to sail a shaky espionage glider over the heart of hostile Russia at 75,000 feet, which was not right, from Turkey to Norway. Powers was a man who, for adequate pay, would do it, and as he passed over Minsk, would calmly reach for a salami sandwich. We are all different, and it's a little unfair to expect every virtue in any of us. Ooh, what a put down. And Powers had to live with this, had to wait all these things. Finally, from time to time, he requested the permission to the agency to write his story. In the meantime, Donovan had his say. Eisenhower had written about it in his biography. Other people had written books about it. They wouldn't let him tell his story. Finally, in 1970, he decided he was going to write a book, whether the agency liked it or not. When he told the agency, he said, we'll help you. You can come to Washington and look at stuff. And he said, no thanks. This is my story, and I'm going to tell it as I experienced it. And that's what he did. Okay, I've gone on way too long here, but thank you so much for listening.